Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing beautifully. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Good to be here with you all, and I'm excited for today's conversation. Haven't been live on YouTube for a few weeks, so good to be back here and having the conversation today because it's one of my favorite topics for sure. And what has been going on right now in the world, especially when it comes to disclosure? Well, everything really. It's like a crazy show out there. So much is happening. Normally I'm not watching the news, but I got to be honest, I've kind of glued to a lot of things lately because there's just so much occurring, and many things that we have maybe thought would not have happened seem to have been happening. And one thing, for example, tying into our conversation today, is I don't know if you guys watched the last Joe Rogan show. It was like a couple of shows ago when it had two government whistleblowers that were in the programs. They had a lot of people come out speaking about people they knew in the programs, speaking about things that they heard about the programs, speaking about black budget programs, UFOs, crash reversal teams, dissecting ET bodies, all of these things. And we were not getting people that were actually in the programs until about a few weeks ago, where one individual came out and did a long form interview on what was it, Ross Coulhart's show on News Nation, and then he's been on other shows. And as he was being interviewed, he named other people that were in the program and outed them, but they're not really upset about being outed. And now two of those people were on Joe Rogan, and I've literally listening to these military whistleblowers today speaking about mantis beings and speaking about phone conversations, top secret phone conversations, and the fact that when the word reptilian would come up, they were told to shut up and not speak about the reptilians, right? Like all the stuff within this world, even spoke about, these military guys spoke about the woo and how they know that people are communicating with them and connecting with them through channeling and all this stuff, but that's a little too far out there for them. So kind of validating that is a reality, they know what's happening, but because of their upbringing, they've been so conditioned to not be into that world, but they know what's actually occurring and have communication with them, speaking about all these beings that are connecting with us now. So we are on the precipice, guys, for something huge in the world. And I feel that very, very soon there's going to be a full awareness that we are not alone in the universe. When I say that to some people, a lot of people say, we already know that. Well, go down the street, ask 100 people, and if some people say no, they don't know that, then we don't all know that. And it's going to get to a point where everybody on the earth is going to know we're not alone in the universe. And that's the first step in shifting our consciousness to the fact that we're not just alone, not alone, but they're freaking here. They're visiting us. They're on Earth. They've been interacting with us for ages. A whole other world coexists with us. So today we're gonna start a conversation along that, and this is actually the beginning of a lot of shows I'm gonna probably do on this topic because, um, as I said, it's picking up momentum. The heat is increasing. We even have a real disclosure conference coming up in exactly a month from now. That is a surprise free event that's going to be 3 days on this topic. And today we have two individuals that are going to join us in a moment. We have Daniel and Derek, Daniel Salter, and they're both the grandsons of, they're both the grandsons of Daniel M. Salter, who discussed his above top secret military career in his book, Life with the Cosmos Clearance. And I had Derek and Daniel on my show a while ago, and Daniel Salter ultimately held a cosmic clearance 38 levels above top secret, dealing with specifically with UFOs, ET, and particlization, the science behind time travel. And the U.S. Air Force from 47 to 68, he worked with Conrad Courier for President Eisenhower and was part of the original Men in Black under Project Blue Book. His grandsons, Daniel and Derek, now co-host their own show, Shred the Veil, that literally taking the baton and continuing the legacy on the YouTube channel CLR Thought and Infinite with a Y.TV, where they do their best to live up to their grandfather's legacy of disclosing imminent truth that needs to be revealed to the public now more than ever. So let's go ahead and welcome Daniel and Derek on. Hey guys.
Hey Neil, how you doing?
Doing good, man. It's good to see you guys.
You too. Absolutely.
Great to see you.
It's been a long time, so I'm really curious to see, what you guys have been up to and what more truth that you've been unveiling and discovering. But I'd love for you guys just to start out with, I know a couple of years ago you spoke about your grandfather, did a little short synopsis, but it's been a while, so maybe you can catch everybody up to really who your grandfather was and even the moment when you realized, who he was, what subjects he was into, and were you guys already into it at that point, or was that kind of the spark for you to get into this awareness?
Yeah, well, definitely. We can kind of cover that. Just starting out, high level overview. Like you mentioned in the bio there, that our grandfather Daniel Morse Salter, he was in the U.S. Air Force from 1947 to 1968, and after his career in the Air Force, he became an NRO operative. That's the National Reconnaissance Office. And until the mid 90s, the National Reconnaissance Office was an unknown group. It was not a publicly known faction of the military. It's actually under the CIA. And so during that time, it was very, it was very secretive what he was doing. Turns out he had, like you said, a clearance level 38 levels above top secret, the Cosmos clearance, which very few people had at that time. I don't think it's grown that much since then. But he started his career with an encounter of his own at Warner Robins Air Force Base when he first got into the military, saw a craft, was doing radar. He's a radar specialist. And that kind of kickstarted his whole higher clearance level rankings as he went through his career. He got to be more involved in these black ops projects and things like that. And as you mentioned, like the Men in Black kind of trying to convince people that when they see something that it wasn't real and things like that. So Derek and I, had no idea about this as growing up as him being our grandfather, because he didn't speak about it until really the mid 90s, like I said, when the NRO became a public entity. And at that time, he felt comfortable coming forward with some things that he felt he was able to share. And I remember being a teenager, so I was in my mid late teens, and we would go out to his house in Taos, New Mexico in the summertime, visit for a couple weeks. And I remember one summer he was just all out of the blue started talking about UFOs and aliens and saying that these things are real. He was telling me about Nazi bases in Antarctica and holes in the ozone layer because they're doing atomic weapons testing down there. He was telling me about beings that could materialize from another dimension to take on bodies so that they could interface with our reality. He was talking about the Philadelphia experiment, where with the time travel and the aspects of that. He was showing me VHS tapes of UFO craft, and it seemed like very old footage. I don't know the specifics around it, but he was presenting all this information to me. And as a teenager, my mind was blown. I had never had anybody talk to me about UFOs or anything like that. It wasn't something that I was really into. And so I didn't really know how to handle that. I didn't know if all right, Grandpa's going crazy now. I didn't know what to believe, really, because he had never spoken to our parents about it before. So it was completely new. So I kind of kept it to myself. And then come to be 2001, he is a part of Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, one of the 21 ex-military witnesses that came forward to deliver their testimony. And then he wrote his book in 2003, Life with a Cosmos Clearance, where he went into great detail about his history with everything and the real story of what's going on behind the scenes. And during that time, like late 90s, 2001 to 2003 and beyond, his health was really declining. So he had these mini strokes, and it was really difficult for him to communicate. So we never, when it first came out, the book, that was the first time that we knew that he was even in the Disclosure Project even. So we didn't really have a chance when he was kind of in bad shape after that came out to really talk to him about the material and the content in that book, to ask him questions about it. So we never really had to have that communication with him once we knew what he claimed he knew. So that was unfortunate, but that's kind of how we got in. I got into it, at least. I know Derek has a similar, but slightly different experience,
Sure. Derek, how did you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. And I just remember I was only 10. It was like in 1993 when he sat us down at he was at our house. I was really obviously quite young. We we were just kids. And my mom said, your grandfather has something to say. And he sat us down at the table and just told us that first experience about 1949 when he had the counters of, it was actually 3 craft. And he was like the head of his team running the radar against SAC or Strategic Air Command and all these other things. So, and as soon as they saw that, he had to call it in, and he said, "We've got something," and they asked, "What is it?" He said, "Cosmos." And so then it had to go dark, and basically they came to confiscate all the photos and stuff. But he said to the team, "Keep a copy for your grandkids so that you can pass this along." So supposedly he did that, and that's part of what's on the book. But similar to my brother, like we just knew we started to talk about this information here and there, and just talk about aliens and stuff that wasn't in the mainstream. And so I actually, he told me certain books to read. The first book he ever told me to read was The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin, when I was just really young, like 15. So that's how I really got into, going down the rabbit hole, as you could say, as like looking outside the box. And all the time I'd go to the New Age section of the library growing up and be like, well, I got to find other pieces of the puzzle here, that kind of the stuff nobody really wants to look at, but it tells a story. And I actually collected his books after he passed away in 2007. And it paints a big picture, and I was able to really, add on to his collections from there and see how all those pieces start to fit. But I think me and my brother both have had certain experiences that kind of also led us into this direction, and knew that there was something more to life and something more than what we're being told. And our grandfather obviously was telling a bigger part of the story here. So even in the last few years, have we really seen that what he was trying to share back then is really coming to light right now? I mean, nothing's been like debunked. It's just basically all coming to the surface of what he was trying to say. So.
Yeah, exactly. And he was in the Air Force from 47 to 68, which is interesting because that's right when, Roswell occurred, and that's when the program started, and also the foundation of the CIA, which a lot of people speculate had to do with the cover up, right? So it seems like he was instrumental in the beginning phases of all this. And I'm curious because, I would love to, because I know you guys have a presentation, we'll get into that in a second, but what were some of the revelations? Because we know he was in the U.S. Air Force. He had a Cosmos clearance. I haven't read the book. What were specific things in the beginning phases of it even becoming a governmental program, if you can even call it that he was dealing with? I know he said science behind time travel, but what does that really mean? Did he go into more details with you or in his book?
Yeah, Dan, I don't know how you want to explain it. I think the book is very interesting because he'll say he was a part of this or that, but he won't put exact dates to anything, or exact places or people, or even project names necessarily, because it seems like what he was trying to do is protect himself. And most of everything that you can find in the book, you can find on the public record, you can find through Freedom of Information Act, that sort of thing. But he was always referring to these projects like the Philadelphia experiment regarding time travel, and saying that, yeah, that's a real experiment. And he told us that as we were kids. He said, go watch that movie, because that's not fiction, that's fact, that's a true story, and whatever version they made for Hollywood, but it indeed is essentially a true story. So little things like that. But in the book, yeah, it's hard to explain, because he puts all these little nuggets in there and gives you pieces and paints a picture. But and like I said, he's not very specific on exactly when and where. But we know that he worked under Benoit Mandelbrot. That's what he says is how he also had access and got higher clearance levels, is because he would start to ask questions, and they would be like, well, you don't really have a need to know about that. But over time, this is what he actually said in a video testimony, that they began to trust him and maybe see him as more of an asset. And you go through all these tests and screening processes to get higher levels of clearance. But it just kind of, I would just say the book is like a Forrest Gump of being in the Black Project military industrial world, that was going on throughout that time.
Did he interact with beings, like actually get to meet them?
So that's an interesting point too. He doesn't state that in the book, but what we've come to find out through all these other independent sources, whether it's remote viewing through channelers, somebody who supposedly has direct connections. Actually, two different people that have claimed they're getting direct contact with him all claim that he did interact in some way. Even through the secret space program files and through the ACIO, we've also confirmed that he was somehow interacting with these beings at some point in his career.
Yeah, we've had so many independent sources tell us about him. It's too many people coming forward for it not to be true in some capacity. And with respect to the information that he had in the book and what he was comfortable sharing, we've learned talking to some of the other witnesses like Dan Willis, who met our grandfather there in 2001 at the Disclosure Project, that, these guys were terrified to say this stuff, because a lot of them, were under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure that, what if they say something that, they shouldn't be saying right now. There's a lot of fear around disclosing certain information that they've been sworn not to talk about. And our grandfather was friends with Phil Schneider. He knew Bill Cooper, and seeing how some of these early whistleblowers came out with information, and they led to an early demise, unfortunately. And so he feared, from what we're understanding, more for the safety of his family than his own life, and because he knew exactly how it worked, because he was in, as we mentioned, like the Project Blue Book, the Men in Black thing, where he said he was part of the first team that would come out and try to convince people that if they saw a crash or had an encounter, that it really wasn't that it was something else. They try to give him some kind of BS story about it. But if his team was unsuccessful, he said a second team would come in, and that's where they would get into the blackmail, the threats against their family and things like that. And he said if that didn't work, the third team came in, and these were these contract assassins basically, and they would take him out. So he knew how it worked. He knew exactly what would happen if certain things were disclosed at certain times. So he was very he used a lot of discretion in what he put in his book and what he felt comfortable coming forward with.
Right. Yeah. And when David Grush, I think was it was David Grush, when he was in Congress, and they asked him, has anybody, I forget the words now, but has anybody been basically a victim to knowing the truth, right? And he did say that, people have lost their lives because of this information, and it's now coming out. And I remember even like the faces of the congressional members when they had that realization that a lot of people have been in these programs, and if they shared it in the wrong way with people that they shouldn't have, then they could have just been taken out. And so when it comes to the cover-up, they say 70 years of this cover-up. And a lot of it, when it comes out, there's a lot of atrocities that were committed in order to keep it a cover-up. But then they say 70 years, but if you really come to think of it, if during your grandfather's time, they were experimenting on time travel, they'd interacted with ETs already, how far into it were they already? It's not like that was 70 years ago, right? So it's not like they just hit the road running with all this awareness. So the truth really is like, well, the question really is, how far does this really go back? We have some information about Mussolini in the 1930s and things like that, but it seems like this has been going for much longer. So what are your thoughts on that?
Our grandfather goes into, and you've probably heard similar things now about Nazi Germany pre-World War II. He talks about that in his book, and secret societies, the occult groups, the Vril Society, the Thule Society, that started with their experiments trying for time travel, but ending up with anti-gravity technology. And supposedly it was information that was given to them through ET contact, and that was started as early as the 1930s, early 30s. He also talks about in his testimony with Dr. Greer that they found two crash craft in Brazil in like 1932. So that kind of started their reverse engineering activities, a couple of decades before we started that.
In 1932?
1932, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's kind of the timeline that he gives in his book. But yeah, who knows if that information has, probably gone even further back than that, I would probably imagine.
Yeah,
and he hints at. Yeah, go ahead.
Eric.
I was just saying that he hints. I mean, he talks about even Atlantis, Lemuria, and that we've obviously been in contact with beings, celestial beings, for eons since the beginning. So that's no wonder. But
Wow. So he speaks about that in his book, huh?
yeah, he
Very
does.
interesting.
He goes
Very interesting.
like this. It's a very interesting thing. All the chapters are very unique, and they kind of just they go off into their own little tangent. But like he does go into the occult a whole lot about German occult and UFO, all that history, and into the esoteric and the brotherhoods. The brotherhood societies, basically the Illuminati, and how they've been at work for so long. So
wow,
lots
very
going on.
very interesting. I guess having that level of top secret clearance, he must have been really in the know of what's happening. And it seems like all of this stuff that is deeply esoteric, the deepest level of esotericism, which I would include Lemuria and Atlantis in that. Maybe Lemuria a little more than Atlantis, And the fact that he's even speaking about it. There's even a CIA document, I forget the name of it now, that speaks about how they realize time goes in cycles and there's a devolution and an evolution of consciousness, right? And so there's enough information to really back up the fact that a lot of what's coming to us, telepathically, we exist in this kind of holographic reality where it seems to be computer program, like we're organic computer code or something like that. And we're able to receive that type of information, right? So I would love at this point, I know you guys have a presentation. Do you guys want to jump into some things that you have to share there?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. And we can kind of go through pretty quick and just do the highlights of what's important. But
yeah, we can go deep into whatever topics you guys have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, while we're waiting for Daniel to pull it up, Derek, tell me your YouTube channel so I can put it in the chat here.
It's CLR Thought. That should pull it up. But I think there's some numbers to it. I think the link has actual numbers to it. But CLR Thought, you could be able.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we got it here.
Perfect.
Cool. Okay. So here it is. Daniel Morris Salter. Like we said, he's had a career in the Air Force, 47 to 68, the NRO from 69 to really don't know when. He was recruited as an operative. We'll go through that later, but we were not, I guess it's for life when you're in. He was a disclosure witness at Dr. Greer's press conference in 2001. And he came out with his book right here, Life with This Cosmos Clearance, in 2003. On here. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate this. There it is. Okay. Here's we got a lot of documentation from the Air Force when we requested it. So this is just his enlistment date. And these are his different enlistments periods from always starting in 47 all the way. This goes to 67, but he was done in 68, sorry. His tours of duty, he was in Japan from 47 to 50. He was in the Korean War in the early 50s. He was back in Japan, and then he spent some time in Germany later on at the end.
When was he enlisted? July? It was July something?
It was right before Roswell.
Like a month before Roswell. 1 month before Roswell.
Yeah.
You know what I'm realizing from a lot of these whistleblowers speaking? Almost all of them, the ones that were on Joe Rogan, the ones David Grush, Chris Mellon, all speak about how they were interested in UFOs when they were a child, how they had a UFO sighting. Mm-hmm. And you know how like when we experiencers and people on here watching this see UFOs, a lot of times they're connected to us. I got a feeling like these people that end up in the programs have some sort of ET contact or some sort of ET heritage that puts them into that program so that they can be the ones to really bring it out.
I totally believe that. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
That's what we're finding out from the sources we're getting, talking about like who he was and how we're connected as a family. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And this is a proof of his cryptographic clearance, which we're kind of going to the clearance levels in another slide here. But showing that he did have that cryptographic clearance, which covers several different levels. But this was required for him when he was that Conrad Courier for President Eisenhower. Basically, that's one of two men that goes ahead of the president carrying the war codes in case he needs to press the red button. They got the codes that have to be confirmed independently to make sure that that it works.
But just so you know, on that slide, because people are going to wonder, like, why is it dated April of '68, which is basically when he's retiring from the Air Force. But he had obviously these clearances way before that. This was almost like what we believe is almost like a way to keep him from speaking, because now he has an official certificate that says he has access to that. So if he ever speaks about it, then they have something legally to keep him binded after he leaves after leaving the Air Force. So that's
right. Otherwise, there was nothing on his record. Yeah, there was nothing on his record to keep him from talking. Right.
Because it was right before his retirement. Yeah.
These are just some of the medals that he received throughout his time. He was a Chief Master Sergeant, one of the higher ranks you can achieve there, in charge of electronics, radar, and things like that. Just some more. When he retired, he was a flight instructor at a community college, but this was the time that he would have been in the NRO, actually. And this is just some footage of, or some pictures rather, of Dr. Greer's press club conference in 2001 for his disclosure project. And down there on the right, you can see that's Clifford Stone, but that's our grandfather right there behind him.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so out of the 20 some, he's rarely even mentioned. Dr. Greer's never mentioned him once really since that 2001. So I don't know if there's a reason behind that, but the main thing to note is that he's the only one that wasn't able to speak on the podium when it was his turn to talk. He froze up. He was too scared to speak and say what he had to say.
Yeah.
He basically just got too startled. Something was preventing him from actually getting it out, and he left early. Like right after that, he called my mom and said, "Come get me because I don't want to be here anymore." Like he was scared to stay.
Whoa! Like you could have even just told Dr. Greer, just scratch me from the record if he froze up like that.
Yeah, I mean, we did have. So we did get the in the Disclosure Project videos. If you see that from Dr. Greer, it does have his testimony that he gave on camera like a year before. So there's that at least.
He's still used in the video DVD. So
so his first encounter, Derek kind of already talked through this about seeing the three craft. They painted it on radar and to confirm what they were seeing visually, and they just kind of froze in the air, he said, and then they just took off. And according to the radar, it was like thousands of miles per hour from a complete standstill, and there was nothing that the military had technologically at that time that they were coming forward with. So it was pretty wild. And then they basically confiscated all evidence, told them never to talk about it again. Then the NRO, as I said, it was a secretive organization until the mid-90s. He also said they were referred to as the Guardians of the High Frontier or the Coldest Warriors. Basically, they're in charge of communications, surveillance, is kind of how they came to be through the CIA.
Yeah, they're known for like the U-2 spy plane. Like that's how that kind of got out, and that's what they're known for in the beginning. Dan, before you get into like the details here, like we just realized that this picture was taken obviously at my graduation, but it was the same trip he made to Virginia where we lived right before he went up to DC. So it was within that same few days. But you look at him here in this picture, and then look at him if you go back to what he looked like in that conference. I mean, it's like he aged. It literally looks like he aged drastically.
Yeah,
but that's the same time.
What's the time difference between those two photos? This is when?
It's within the same week. It's within a week's time, within a few days. It's we just realized that. I mean, we feel like he really something was like targeting him to prevent him from really getting all the information out. So
Yeah, when we talked to Dan Willis about it, he said he just kind of just, when it was time for him to speak, he just kind of made this like grunting sound and couldn't get any words out, and just kind of, they had to stop him and let him sit down because he was like overwhelmed, you know. But we didn't realize it. He had his CIA hat on. We didn't, you know, looking at this photograph, that's a CIA hat, and behind his Air Force wings that he always used to wear. I never like thought too much of it back then. But we're talking about the NRO. It was initially established as part of the CIA, and looking at, you know, the significance of 1947. The National Security Act, what was in July 26, 1947, same month as the Roswell crash, as we just mentioned, initiated by Harry Truman, who was a 33-degree Mason. The U.S. Air Force and the CIA, it was all established a month later, September 18th. Alan Dulles, it was the concept of converting the surveillance faction of the Army, the OSS, into a permanent group.
Basically,
MJ-12,
yeah, the spy network, our spy network, yeah.
MJ-12 was established a few days later, and then earlier that year was Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd going down to Antarctica and his encounter there with the Nazi crafts. Project Paperclip was in place during that time, bringing over the Nazis to engineers to the United States, and they were already working on various underground base plans for New Mexico and Colorado at the time. So a lot happened right then, like kicking things off.
Also important to note is obviously you see the name Alan Dulles, and hopefully we're going to finally get some answers on the JFK assassination a little bit more. But Alan Dulles was head of the CIA during Kennedy's administration, and Kennedy fired him actually shortly before he ended up getting killed. So, and guess who was the head of the Warren Commission to investigate the death of Kennedy? It was Alan Dulles. So that just seems just too weird. Like there's all these things that point to a big, you know, a conspiracy obviously to kill him, and who was there to cover it up. So
about him disclosing the deep state and the truth about UFOs, right?
Yeah, and when you see some
he knew he knew about. He wanted to expose it. He wanted to go to the moon, a space race with Russia. He wanted to tell Russia about the files and everything about UFOs, so that it could be done together.
Right. Well, it's interesting. The JFK files are supposed to come out very soon, and I wonder if they will speak about that at all, or just who actually took him out. Maybe the reason behind it will come out as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they really come out with the truth about that and exposing the corruption of that, I think it would be a good step forward to exposing corruption with the UFO cover-up as well. Yeah,
I feel it could be, just because, you know, Marco Rubio, right? Just a little side note here, being the Security Council secretary, whatever. Marco Rubio was one of the first people before all the new congressional members that was pushing for UAP disclosure.
Oh,
yeah, he was, you know, when the COVID relief bill came out. I don't know if you guys know this, but the COVID relief bill, a bunch of stuff, stimulus check. On the last page was a request for a full report on UAPs in the last 70 years, right? Out of the whole relief bill, right on the last page. Marco Rubio was the guy that wrote that up.
you know, nice.
So yeah,
wow. This is going to be interesting for sure.
It is.
I feel like there's a lot happening right now, and this just kind of covers cosmic clearance and what that looks like. And this chart, we actually got this online, but it kind of aligns with what he was saying about being that high above top secret. It shows you where it says top secret crypto in that band there, you know, what that covers to have cryptographic clearance. And it shows you where the president is in comparison. So it was pretty much at the top, basically, is what as he knew it. And from what we understand, each one of these levels is very compartmentalized. And if you were at, you know, level 28, you would think this is as high as it goes. There's no one else above me, because they don't tell anybody the full story. They'll get the whole picture. It's all, I'm working on this project, and not realizing what the bigger, you know, what it's playing into, what kind of strategy or real purposes of it all. But they all think they're at the top.
And just to let you know, this this picture came from the online. It came from online. We just searched and you find this chart. But our grandfather has other, claims other levels for once you get to the top. So who knows who's right? I mean, our grandfather claims he was at that level. So maybe his information is a little more valid than this. We don't know where this came from and who
So
put
this
it
is
online.
okay. So we're not sure if it's from a government website or how it came about.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's what you find online, and it's like my brother said, it's very compartmentalized. You could probably get little bits of access to one, like cosmic clearance or ultra, or how they're interlinked together. But I'm sure to basically be cleared to say you have cosmic clearance means you see a bigger part of the picture, like you have a much better lens of seeing it all. So that's something to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah, and there are, I mean, we've heard other people come forward talking about cosmic clearances as well. And if you look at there's MJ12 documents that are grandfather included in his book that are out there now, where they are stamped ultra. A lot of them have ultra clearances, was what they're listed as. And this was back in the 50s. Yeah.
And it makes you think of MK Ultra, and if ultras, think about how top level MK Ultra would be, because that's the other big part of this. Like if that type of information comes out and what we've done to, our own people and in these programs, it's quite a lot. So,
and it makes you wonder, why are all these top level security clearances have to do with like space, like orbit, cosmos, astral, stellar, cosmic, like Luna, like,
majestic. Majestic is like super mystical.
Right. What are they really covering up? This is from my grandfather's book. This is Star Wars City is what they called it, but it's basically a map of the military industrial complex as it was in probably the 80s with that time frame. And it shows you the NROs in there. It shows you where they all connect. Magi, you've got all your major corporations down at the bottom with the aerospace, Lockheed, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas.
Dude,
where's this from? The book?
This is from my grandfather's book. Yeah.
Oh my God, he broke it down.
Yeah, talking about
and you can find that. Like I said, you can find it online. You can still find that chart. It's some military, obviously high up ranking guy put it out in like the late 90s, I think, or early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We have a question here. What does ZD-27 stand for?
Did
you see that somewhere?
On here, yeah, that level of clearance right there. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll be honest. I don't know. He didn't mention that specifically. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
Derek, did you want to talk about some of these different notes over here on this? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, how if you're reverse engineering or back engineering ET vehicles, it's classified as ultra cosmic top secret. So those are just designations that he claims you would have for that purpose. Majestic 12's 32, according to him, and the Magi cosmic Q is level 33.
Cosmic Q, right?
Yeah. So must be we know there's a Q level clearance. And Q is anything, as far as I'm aware of, is anything related to the nuclear or atomic, dealing with that. And so because he was a Conrad Courier and handled the launch codes, nuclear codes, I think he was trying to kind of hint at that he had to have a Q level at least to get to that level during the Eisenhower era, and then, worked his way up from there too. So cosmic Q obviously goes beyond into the UFO subject, I'm sure. Yeah. And other than that, I think ultra. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it, Derek.
Just the ultra. There's some files I think we'll get to, but the ultra level is also related to these underground bases. There's some files we found in this guy that he claimed he only had an ultra level clearance, but that's basically interacting with these ETs underground and the stuff that Phil Schneider was talking about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the whole nuclear thing too is completely interacted and connected to ETs, because as soon as we started messing with nuclear power, that's when the sightings began.
Absolutely, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
And he does mention that in the book, and he says that's a main reason they started coming around, because we're messing up more than just our little planet and atmosphere. It goes interdimensional, right? So,
bro, yes, man. Well, the way I see it is that the universe is a reflection of the inner world, spiritually and scientifically, right? Because ultimately, we're all frequency. This is not physical like we see it, but so it maybe the external reality is a reflection of the subatomic particles within us, right? And as we go,
I mean, imagine it like a. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
no, go for it, Derek. I want to hear.
I was gonna say, imagine it like a cancer, like it's a cancer cell. We're letting off these bombs, and it's like literally cancer cells going off in our body. Like we're one whole, that's it. Like, why would you want to do that to your own body?
Splitting the atom, which is the source of the code that everything reflects out of, right? It's almost like if you if you have a hard drive and you put a mini explosion in one part of the hard drive, like a little implosion, the whole entire thing is going to be affected from it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you hear about like atomic explosions tearing holes in different dimensions and time space and things like that. And our grandfather talks about in the book, the military has tried on multiple occasions to get nuclear weapons in space, and that they've been stopped every time by an ET force. I mean, they've been very clear that whatever extraterrestrials are out there do not want us having weapons of that caliber in space, or any weapons really.
All the major bases.
Yeah, and they tried to do it on the moon. That's what he did say, that they tried to send another one to the moon, and they made sure that thing did not make it.
They wouldn't have it
to the moon. Yeah. I can go quickly into some of this. This is just a letter that I found in some of the files. We still have these boxes of storage, and my brother still has a few he's got to go through, actually. And we might find a lot more into that. But this one was just a note. And if you know who Ryan and Bob Wood are, Bob Wood is the father who really, they've both been working really hard to get to the bottom of MJ12 and the documents and prove what's real or what's not. But Bob Wood wrote a book with William Tompkins. He helped try to validate what William Tompkins was saying. So they're like the leaders in that field, at least in the last 20 some years. And our grandfather was somewhat in discussion or trying to reach them and actually show what he knew or tell them what he knew about MJ12. So that was interesting.
Back in 1999. Yeah. So, I mean, this was pre everything's on the internet kind of days. This was like correspondence via mail and everything. Yeah. We have a lot of interesting letters we found. And this was interesting. So our grandfather, he talks about the Interplanetary Phenomenon Scientific and Technical Counterintelligence Unit. And that's what he says he was a part of that unit within the NRO. And this little excerpt here, Day After Roswell, from Colonel Courier's book, he talks about this is the only other place I've seen it mentioned. He talks about that unit being established, being called into action to check out Roswell, basically. But it was established after that some crashes in Los Angeles a few years earlier.
The Battle of Los Angeles in 42.
So that's where it kind of started. But this is where he has this license plate, and this he said it was given to him as a retirement gift, which they're really not supposed to do. But he got this license plate, and there's a story that goes along with this. That he had this on his van, and he actually sold the van to our parents, to my mom and dad. And my dad is a civil engineer, and he does various foundation projects and infrastructure projects in Virginia. And he had a job coming up at the Norfolk Navy base down in Virginia. And so, just starting off the project, and he went to the base. And everyone told him it would take him, probably a half hour to get through security, and they'd be asking him all kinds of questions, and he'd have to go through all the screenings and everything like that before he'd be able to get in there. But what happened when he drove up through security with this van and this license plate on, the guy just waved him through, like, without even a second glance. And our dad was baffled. He got to go in and have his meetings and things like that. But when he, on his way out, he asked the guy, how come he let him through so much? And he told him, I was expecting that I'd be some kind of questions or anything like that. And he just pointed to the license plate, and apparently it was known at that level that there was something to that. Yeah.
So that's probably the most convincing information that we have to go off of. That's physical evidence to show that he had a clearance way above what's just the cryptographic clearance. So yeah.
Right. Well, just his book in general, that is now being validated with people in Congress, right? So you now see, like, before you could have been like, somebody could have said like he made it up, but now you have like people on record coming out saying the same things as he has. So now that's giving you more evidence that not just any person in government or in the Air Force is just going to get that awareness, right? You gotta be one of the few that really has that level of knowledge to receive it all. Even David Grush didn't have that level of awareness. His information came from other people that did have that level of awareness, but were too scared to come on record.
Yeah. Yeah, and David Grush was the only other person that's come forward since our grandfather that claims to be from the NRO, which our grandfather was the only one back then who was from the NRO in 2001. And David Grush is claiming that, well, we don't know what these things are, and they exist, but we have no idea what they are. While our grandfather is saying the complete opposite. We know exactly
what he knows what they are. Yeah. Well, it seems like your grandfather went a little further than the NRO. But one before you guys continue, it was interesting because the one thing that really, out of all the congressional hearings, there's like been 3 in the last 3 years or something, and more. There was one thing that stuck out the most. When a congressional member asked David Grush, "What do you think these are?" and he goes, "I don't know, but from what he's been told, holographic projections of higher consciousness." That's what he said in Congress.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, bro. Not this last one that happened a few months ago, but the one that happened a year before that. In August of 22.
That's right.
Yeah. Blew my mind.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. We're starting. It's starting to come together, I think. If finally.
Yeah. And the people don't, stop and think about what he just said with that. I mean, that's huge. Yeah.
What does that mean? Think about it, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So here, this is just showing that the establishment of MJ-12 through Harry Truman, to Secretary Forrestal, getting this up and going. And our grandfather goes into a lot of detail about Forrestal and what happened with him. He was one of the original members of MJ-12, and he was one of the only ones that wanted to come forward and disclose some information. And he was basically suicided and thrown out a window in a hospital, and they made it look like a suicide, though. But he talks about that quite a bit. Here are some of those majestic documents that we're talking about that he includes in his book. This is from 1954, and it's basically protocols on how to get rid of extraterrestrial craft. In 1954, they had a manual that tells you how to do this.
Is this available online? Not the book, but this documentation, or did he disclose documentation that was not declassified yet?
I think this was. Go ahead, Derek.
You can find it online now, but was it online when he came out with the book? Maybe he knew it was going to go public. We don't know. But it was a while back before. I don't know. The internet just started, so we don't know what was really on there.
Right.
Yeah. But I think he was trying to cover his tracks. He really was trying to cover his tracks, not to release anything that couldn't be found. So,
And
but he did stamp it. There's if you want to explain that too. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, down on the corner on that last page there, you can see kind of like a stamp that actually says Headquarters Interplanetary Phenomenon Scientific and Technical Unit, Counterintelligence Unit. That the name of his department. And I found that ink stamp. I have that stamp in one of the boxes that I found in his storage. So what we found is that throughout his book, when there's documents that are like going down the right rabbit trail, or he will rabbit hole. He'll stamp it with that stamp. It's like his stamp of authenticity. Like, this is really, there's more to it. This is the truth. Because there's only so much, like we said, that he could disclose.
For all we know, that his thumb right there, taking photocopies of it from some secret military base. I don't know, or it's somebody else, but which is still to be undetermined.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This one is very key to kind of all this, and kind of the piece of the puzzle that we're really seeing that's coming out in the forefront now with, you know, all this drone activity, and a lot of people are seeing these black triangles and talking about it. But he brought this up in 2003 in his book, but he did not bring this up in 2001 at the Disclosure Project. He said nobody really talks about this, but there is a program called the Development of Conscious Contact Citizenry Department, which is a mouthful, but he claimed to be a part of that group, or you know, had access to what they were working on, and it's their whole agenda was working within the NRO to weaponize space against a threat from outer space, basically a false flag, using the back-end engineered technology that we have already. And in one light, it's at least getting people aware, used to the idea, like there's other life out there, and what is this stuff? But it seems more of a sinister agenda, at least at one level, where they're trying to do mock demonstrations, and you know, set the stage for allowing getting the public's approval to weaponize space against some threat that, you know. I think that the story is much bigger and more complicated than people can imagine. And I think at the end of the day, you know, there's the good side of ETs and the bad side. And I think there is obviously a lot going on right now on the surface. And I think that humans, at the end of the day, we still have free will, but these negative ETs, you could say, are the ones that have always been interacting with us from a long time to manipulate, you know, the elites and those groups, the black deep state, whatever, to play into their hands and use the technology for whatever means, and this and that. And there's a lot of those agreements that have been made that we talked about, that have been talked about in the 50s. But we also have this good side in the alliance, and we're all aware of that. So I think all of that's being played out right now, and there's a lot of truth to what's being said there. But this is what he wanted to say about the threat that we have, the potential that we have to go down the wrong path if we buy into this. And it's interesting that he would mention the triangles, and he called it the Black Manta, which I found online. The code name for the TR-3B is the Black Manta, but nobody really calls it the Black Manta. He was the only one that would call it that. So that
and that wasn't even really made that well known. The TR-3B wasn't known when he came out with this book.
No,
right.
And
nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it.
And okay, so randomly we found, maybe like 5-6 years ago on YouTube, somebody posted a video of our grandfather giving a lecture, and it was someone in Brazil, because they had Portuguese subtitles on it, and it was obviously converted from VHS, and this was in the late 90s. And he's going into great detail about the Black Manta and all the different bases that they fly out of. He's naming them, rattling them off where they do that. And this was like in like 97, 98 time frame.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so crazy that we found that video. But he goes into a lot of in-depth stuff about ETs, about his experiences. It's a really good comprehensive disclosure of what he really had to say.
Yeah.
So we have that on our YouTube channel. Yeah, go ahead.
I said we have a few more minutes left. And how long is this presentation? How many more slides do you have?
I'll tell you what, Derek. I'll just kind of we got about 10 or so.
It's like halfway.
Perfect, because I want to invite you guys to be a part of the Real Disclosure Conference that's going to be happening in March. It's like the most epic disclosure event I've done in like 16 years.
Nice.
A lot of amazing people you know, some government officials even we're trying to get. And it's really going to be about, first day is all about UFO disclosure. And then we have the implications of UAP and the last day's experiencers. So I'd love for you guys to be there on the first day and do this whole presentation. If you guys are down for that.
Yeah.
It'll be,
So it's
March 10th, but you guys can continue for a few minutes though.
Okay.
And that's online. It's an online.
It's online. Yeah. Same StreamYard will be going live, but this is like epic presentation. And I feel like it's perfect for the event that we're doing. So I'd love for you guys to be a part of it.
Okay.
Well, Dan, you can explain maybe quickly, like what we've new revelations that we're getting right now, and I think we can really probably highlight all that in that talk.
Yes.
But we're still getting information right now about our grandfather from other sources. It's kind of amazing. Here's a few right now. Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, a couple of different people that claim to be from the secret space program, including the ACIO, coming forward with files that they have about our grandfather and his involvement in the development of some of these secret space program things back in the 50s and the early time frame when they first started. People who have channeled two different sources, like mediumship type of channeling, who've had direct contact with him, that have come forward and spoken about similar instances. And then we have a remote viewing, independent remote viewers with Tony Rodriguez. He has these double-blind remote viewing groups that he runs, and I mean, some of the stuff we've come through that I mean, just given a random number, this 354-712, there was like 7 different people that came up with underground bases, UFOs, all kinds of UFO ET interaction type things. So it's pretty remarkable that the remote viewing aspect of it, but yeah, there's a lot of information
complementing each other very well. I mean, putting a story together that's telling a real story about what he knew.
Yeah, and we just continue to, as we get this information, put it out there and add it to our channel so people can see it, and we're always trying to find the real truth.
Yeah, and you guys don't just bring your grandfather's information there. You also interview other people and their experiences as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the Real Disclosure Conference, again, is going to be March 10th. I'm going to send you guys the info in a little bit. I want you to really dive in deep on that one. And I would love before we close out, you've given us some history. What's going on now? Like, what do you see is happening in this moment? And yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on. We need a whole show just to speak about all the different revelations. There's a lot of confusion out there. Some people are throwing the baby out with the bathwater because they've been so disillusioned from government. You know what I mean? So I'd just love to know what your guys' opinion is on all the revelations, the government stuff, and disclosure.
Well, I think what you mentioned at the beginning, with the Joe Rogan, getting people on there like at that level of just reaching the entire world, and now it's finally to a point where there's so much more to it. People are going to finally start listening. I feel like you were saying, you walk down the street. Well, not everybody believes this just yet, because probably 5 out of 10 people will say no, that's impossible. So I think there's a lot. We're on the cusp of really embracing this information as truth finally.
Yeah.
And I think we need to use our discernment more than ever now. I mean, so much information that we can get, disinformation, misinformation. There's always a sliver of truth in everything. Everything we hear, there's going to be a little truth there. And it might be triggering for some people to hear one side of a story other than this side, but we have to be willing to take in the information and figure out what fits, what doesn't, what we can resonate with, what doesn't suit us at the time. But I mean, there's so much coming at us. And so we have to be grounded, and we have to stay, very vigilant, and just really, I don't know, just be very cautious with everything, but take it with a grain of salt, but know that there is a lot of truth to it. Listen to the message. Don't criticize the messenger so much, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, so many things can be said, and I think it's an exciting time, but we have to be careful because both sides are coming into play at this, the dark side and the light. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, man, it's crazy what's going on in the world. How it connects to just like the sacred dance. You just said the light and the dark, the sacred dance between the light and the dark. And I'm coming to a realization it's not so much a battle, it's more of a dance, on the way things have happened for quite some time. And we have an opportunity to really dissect and see who we are and what everything is, right? And with that, there's a lot of turbulence, because the only way we're going to accept this new reality is by the paradigm that we've created crumbling. But how many eons have we relied on that paradigm to identify with who we are? You know what I'm saying? It's not that easy. But what you guys have been great, and that's literally, as you're presenting, I was like, you guys have to be there. is because your information with your grandfather is literally on the par level of the whistleblowers that are coming out right now, but even more so because they're coming out and they're saying, oh, this is what I'm allowed to say. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even fully informational. They're like, oh, I cleared this with the DOD, and the DOD says that I can say this. Oh, I can't talk about that. You know,
Right.
that's why it's like that's why I call this event the real disclosure, because we the stuff that people aren't allowed to talk about. It's really like what is the bigger picture of what's going on, you know? So I'd just like to say thank you guys for just being you and everything that you're doing, and really just continue to, as I said last time we were on this thing, like not only holding your grandfather's legacy down and moving it forward, but continuing what he was doing on another level because you're bringing disclosure into the world. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
appreciate you guys. And before you leave, any final words you want to share about where people can find out more about you?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Neil. Appreciate that so much. And thanks for having us on. Yeah, our YouTube channel is Clear Thought, CLR Thought. And yeah, check us out. We've got episodes with other experiencers and just trying to bring the truth to light. So I'm very excited about it.
Thank you.
Same with that. So thank you so much for having us. And we're excited to be a part of that in March for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Because I remember last time we said, let's do some stuff together. But 2 years later, we never did anything. So I think it's time now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's do it. All right. Appreciate you guys.
The time is
Okay.
now. Okay.
It is. Yeah,
Thank
straight
you.
up, man. All right. Take care.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to do one little screen share and show you the real disclosure event really quick before we tune out. Okay, here we go. And I don't have it fully booked yet, but you can see the Real Disclosure Conference is free or by donation, March 10th to 12th, 3 days. This is going to be so good. Like, I'm so excited about this one. We stand on the precipice of a paradigm shift unlike any other in human history. The reality of UFOs is no longer confined to the whispers in dark corners. Governments, whistleblowers, and scientific bodies are now acknowledging what many have long known. We are not alone. But what the mainstream is willing to reveal is only the top tip of the iceberg. And you heard some information today that goes even deeper. This is only a fraction of who's we're going to be on, because I'm waiting for some people to get back to me. Avi Loeb will be there, Michael Schratt, who actually is an aerospace historian, and the TR-3B, he actually has schematics of that. We got JJ Desiree Hurtak, Preston Dennett, Geraldine Orozco, Mark Ollie, who was a part of a team in Australia for UFO crash retrievals. And, well, he wasn't a part of the team. He was a part of the people that analyzed the crashed UFO parts. So he has some really epic video footage and pictures of crashed UFO parts. We have Mary Rodwell. We have Rebecca Hardcastle. We have Grant Cameron. We have Whitley Strieber. And this is only 1/3 of all the people that are going to be there. So you can sign up, portal2ascension.org. It's going to be truly amazing. And besides that, everybody, appreciate you all. Love you all so much. Thank you for tuning in. And we'll catch